Hello, everyone, and inside today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, we're talking European prospects with our very special guest, Patrik Bexell from Habs Eyes on the Prize. All that and more inside today's show.
Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 805 of Locked On Canadiens. We are, of course, your daily Montreal Canadiens podcast here at the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day. I am your host for today. I am Scott Matla, as always. Thank you for subscribing wherever you get your daily podcast, or if you're watching on YouTube, the surprise has already been spoiled for you in what is going on in this episode. I am not alone for today's show. I am bringing in one of my good friends, one of my best coworkers, European correspondent for Habs Eyes on the Prize, and all-around generally great person, Patrik Bexell. Patrik, thank you so much for making the time to join and us working out the time difference within 15 to 20 minutes pretty well.
Indeed, it took some hours because you had daylight saving time going back, right? And but yeah, and you just keep telling me I'm the nice person because I keep sending you beers every now and then.
Well, I keep saying I'm going to have Patrik on, and then I have other guests on, and I keep forgetting to have Patrik on because it's hard to figure out the time to do this.
But
I am very grateful.
I'm so surprised though, because there are other podcasts that managed to get me on, especially in the Locked On network. You know.
Well, this is awkward. It's even more awkward because Patrik and I work together at Eyes on the Prize. So, of course, it's I am always happy to have Patrik on, and I know Laura is very appreciative as well.
And I'm always happy to be on. Let's be honest about that as well. And otherwise, I wouldn't tease you guys about it.
Yes. And we are talking all our European big-name prospects today. As of the news this morning, Jaden Struble has signed his entry-level deal with the Canadiens. Starting next year, he will play the rest of the year in the AHL with the Laval Rocket. But Patrik had his own prospect news of the week, and we talked about it a little bit on yesterday's episode, or I did after the Canadiens game, is that it sounds like Emil Heineman is going to be coming over from the SHL after his team was eliminated in the playoffs to play for the Rocket. And Patrik, you did a little bit of digging into this to figure out the precedent and why all this is possible. So I will let this transfer over to you here. Well, how is it that Heineman can make this happen right now?
I didn't really do the digging. I just lit a blowtorch under Andrew Sadanovsky. Let's be honest about that. But Andrew was kind enough to let me run with it. And that's, we're friends, we're colleagues. And sometimes you give some info to another that they will benefit from or suits their Twitter account better than others. But essentially, what Andrew told me and what I figured out as well, because he signed, first and foremost, he signed a 3-year extension last Christmas 21. That meant that, as you all know from now, that he couldn't go to the AHL this season. Before, like, it was NHL or back to Sweden for him at the start of the season, which is what happened. But since he was on an NHL contract, since he, I think they penciled him in on paper in one way or another around the trade deadline, or just by when it needs to be settled. I think they did Adam Engström as well, and he wasn't even signed. Laval, that is, not Montreal, but which means that when the Swedish team or European team, if it comes to Finland, is eliminated from the playoffs, you could go to the AHL team, and thereby, because you're not risking you're not missing out on your Swedish season, or in this case. And let's be honest, Heineman, even if he's participated in the national team this year, he's not going to be in the World Cup squad by Sam Hallam. So there is an opening, obviously. I think it's a good move for Heineman. I've tweeted out, and I like Heineman. He's a great guy, speaks fantastic English as well, which always helps when you do podcasts or interviews as well. Has a good head on his head. or on his shoulders. And I think, like he has the opportunity here, and I think his style suits the American eyes better. And we're going to come back to that in a bit. But I think it's a really smart move, both by the Canadiens and by Heineman. I'm just expecting him to more or less fly over. Obviously, he's hugely disappointed. It's the first time since they play and started in SHL that a team that won the first game, because it's a best of 3 series, didn't go through.
And because you mentioned that his play style suits the North American ice, and I know that it's different rink sizes. From what I saw from him at the prospect tournament in Buffalo and some of the preseason games, he slowly started to find his feet more, and then he went back to the SHL because, like you said, he wasn't going to crack the NHL roster, and he could not go to the AHL this season. And there were some struggles there. We know he can shoot the puck. We know he has a very good shot. That's always been a big part of his game. I also know that you have been you've been very quick to point out that yes, his strength lies in the offensive zone. He's going to go to the AHL where defense is not an optional task for players here, especially young guys. He's had some struggles there that you've pointed out. What can he do to kind of grow? He doesn't need to become Philip Deneau, Patrice Bergeron, but what can he do to kind of break even on the defensive side of the puck going forward the rest of this season and next year when he's likely to be in North America full time?
I think what it all comes down to, there are a few different aspects of this. I've spoken to some scouts. I've spoken to development coaches in other teams, not in Leksand, but in other teams and in consultancies. And the question is, whereas he get lost sometimes in the defensive zone in coverage and gap control on the European ice, that might be lost. You don't have to worry about that as much because the size are much bigger in Europe, and therefore you can get lost much easier. I think that's part of it. But on the other hand, if you look at the other adjustment you have to do is that the game goes so much faster. And I always think that, he doesn't have the hockey IQ as Arturi Lehkonen or Lucas Vejdemo. Let's be honest about that as well. I would assume Kapanen. I'm not very high on Kapanen, as you're probably going to hear in a bit. But they got really good hockey IQ forwards as well, all of them. He does, however, possess one of the best shots there is. And I've always compared him to someone close to you, Scott, Victor Olofsson or Victor Golofsson, as we should say. You give him good line mates. You give him the strength to perform at a good level. I'm going back to what our former colleagues and at Eyes on the Prize said as well. You start by putting them on a line to succeed, Jack Hand. And that's what you do. You put him on a line to succeed, make sure he gets the opportunity to succeed, and maybe get a very good defensive partner with him, and make sure that he doesn't have to take that defensive zone coverage all the way. He's not a Dale Weiss kind of player where that cheats a little bit. I love Dutch Gretzky and I love the nickname, but he doesn't cheat. He wants to work. He wants to improve. I just think that I think he will suit. I think he will be a successful player in definitely in AHL. But I also think that penciling him in on an NHL roster next year, no. It will take a year more. He needs to get that in. Wicked shot. I mean, let's be honest about that. He shoots through people. Victor Olofsson shoots around people and finds open net that way. Heineman can go through people. And literally goes through people.
And that's the exciting part. And we're going to shift gears a little bit here from Heineman, who has been what Habs fans have been talking about for a year since the Tyler Toffoli trade. We're going to shift to the guy he just got done playing against in the SHL playoffs.
Tony Sund.
Yes, exactly. We're going to get into that all coming up next. But first, today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA season is treading towards the playoffs, and it's the perfect time to download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, America's #1 sportsbook, and you get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000, and that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. The app is safe, secure, and super easy to use, and it's easy to bet money line, point scores, threes drained in a game, and if you're feeling really lucky on a given night, you can bet all those together in a same game parlay to increase your winnings. So don't miss your chance to sign up for a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/locked on to learn more. And remember, make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA, and us here at Locked On. And as always, it is my duty. Please bet responsibly and within your means at all times. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. We are going across the pond and then a little bit further beyond that into Sweden, Finland, and everywhere else. We are joined, of course, by Patrik Bexell, the European correspondent from Habs Eyes on the Prize. We just got done talking Emil Heineman, who played in the SHL playoffs for Leksand. They fell in 3 games to Adam Engström and Tony Sun's Rogel BK in the playoffs. And if I am pronouncing that wrongly, please tell me I am doing my best. Adam Engström has been on the way up since he was playing for the under-20 team, and then he jumped into the SHL this season after playing very well in that league, and he is stuck there, even, sometimes playing as a 7th defenseman. Pat, let the people know, speak on it. What makes Adam Engström tick, and what has caused him to find himself in a very strong SHL club here and drawing a lot more attention than he initially got on his draft day?
Actually, I think, first and foremost, it's pronounced Rögle. You said Leksand, great. You didn't say IF. So don't pronounce the BK as well.
Okay.
You go with that. But anyway, yeah, Rögle. I think Cam Abbott makes him tick. The coach in Rögle, really, really smart guy. I'm a huge fan of Cam Abbott. I'm not going to say he's going to be the first SHL coach to coach in North America because he's Canadian, but
it still counts. It still counts. I'll give it to you.
I think he will stay a little bit longer than that, But Adam Engström, I think he was a hidden gem in a way in Djurgården last year. Östlund, Öland, Lekkerimäki, Lindblom, the goalkeeper, who's just been awarded the best junior player in Hockey Allsvenskan this year, played lights out as well at the World Juniors, But I think Adam Engström, he has some qualities that you might not have seen last year. His hockey IQ is enormous, That's first and foremost. Everyone keeps mentioning Norlinder, and I got that question last night when I posted the highlight pictures of all GIFs of Adam Engström on my Twitter feed. And I think Norlinder has a very much higher offensive upside, or maybe not offensive upside, but skills. Whereas Engström maybe has an offensive upside due to not having the same skills. He has to trust the system. He has to trust the play. He trusts his vision. He knows when to take a shot. In Roger Rönnberg, who coaches Frölundas, he knows when to play poker. He knows when to go forward. He knows when to stay behind. Hockey IQ, he oozes it. His skating is really good. His defensive acumen is there. He still makes some puppy mistakes at this level. And to correct you again, Scott, and I'm sorry to correct you, but he started out with a big club and got a few games in the CHL or Champions Hockey League. Played 2 games in one go in Rögle one night, where he played with the SHL club and then went in and played with the under-20 directly after. He's that kind of guy. He's a rink rat. Cam Abbott says that he has to force him out of the rink, and Adam Engström laughed a little bit and said, there are 3 rinks. I'm sure Cam knows that. Obviously he does, but it's a joke, and it's a good one. He has humor. Not comfortable speaking English all the time yet, as you might have heard in one of my interviews where all he said was awesome. But yeah, no, I think that stands out. And then he has this thing that I think we saw it in the World Juniors. He was more or less sorted in because others were injured and didn't get in. At the end of the tournament, he played top line minutes along Sandin Pellikka, and for the good reason that once he's in, you give him a meter, he takes a mile. You give him a pinky finger, and he takes the whole hand, as we say in Sweden. But he is that, and he rises to the occasion over and over again. We saw it last night. Great goal. And I think the goal describes his, there were other flashes were maybe more brilliance, but the goal was brilliant in the way that he calmly got the puck down with his hand. It landed flat on the ice, which made the goal so simple, but it makes the hard things simple. And I think that is, what has kept him in the lineup. You haven't been able to move him out of it because he is so strong. He spends a lot of time working on his gap control, something that, Hadi, David, and I were always complaining about Norlinder for. He works his defensive assignments. He spends a lot of time watching videos where he does things wrong, not where he does things right. I think that speaks a lot of volume of kind of player that Engstrom is and will be. His ceiling might not be as high as Norlinder's was, but his floor is so much higher. And then you have that. What do you call it? The X factor in a way. But normally when we think X factor it's the skills, it's the highlight reels, it's the shots, it's whatnot. But Engstrom has that X factor where it comes to you can't move me out. And I think, it's not sexy, but damn, it's good.
It reminds me a lot of Jordan Harris a little bit. He's not the flashiest guy on the ice. He wasn't playing at Northeastern, but everything is done with a purpose, with intelligence and reading the play. And obviously, Engstrom is just 19 years old. There is still so much more growing he can do.
And he's at the right team in Sweden to do that growing right now.
And the thing about that is there's no rush to get him into North America now, because I believe you said he has at least another year on his SHL contract, correct?
Yes, he signed an extension this fall, which means that essentially he's this Heineman or Norlinder of previous years where he can crack the Montreal lineup. But, with the recent signing of Struble, there is already 9 defenders on that list. He won't make the lineup. Canadians don't need to sign him this year even to make that possible. You should just be happy to have him over at development camp, let him mature in Rögle. Wallinder goes over to Red Wings and the AHL and the Griffins, I would presume. And that gives a big hole where Engstrom fits right in.
The development path for him in Sweden right now makes so much more sense. Is that, selfishly, if he were to play for the Rocket next year, that's great. It's easier North American viewing, but it doesn't always make sense. And I have to make sure to share this article from the Twitter account, is that you wrote about the Canadians letting their prospects stay in Europe a little while longer. And I think that's the perfect case for Adam Engström right now, is that he does not need to come over. He's getting his footing there. He's playing very well for an under 20 player at the SHL level. Like you said, on a very good club and in the right spot. They've kind of rushed this in the past a little bit. We've seen it with Mattias Norlinder, which is unfortunate. And some of that is injuries, which are out of their hands. And even Emil Heineman a little bit at the start of this season. I'm hoping that this is their learned lesson opportunity here, because everything about Engstrom seems he screams NHL player, even if he's not, Victor Hedman, Erik Karlsson. NHL players are still among the most talented in the world, and he seems to have the mindset and the work ethic to make that happen.
I keep telling my kids in school that, work ethic and all that, it's what makes you try. I mean, like, ethic always beats class in a way, like it's down to that. I remember, and this is how old I am. I'm sorry, guys, but the good old Ivan Lendl, former number 1 tennis player in the 80s, he was asked, how do you become number 1 tennis player in the world? And said, it's easy. You practice 10 hours a day for 10 years, every day.
Hard work always beats
I
talent.
mean, like it sounds very easy, but to do that grind, to do that every day, it takes a lot of dedication, and that dedication is obviously what's going to pay off. And I think Heineman and Norlinder are very strong candidates to play games in NHL. And I've said, obviously, I have a bet with Anton, if you listen to our podcast, that if Heineman plays 20 games for Montreal, I will have to pay a dinner for for Anton, but it could also be a barbecue at my place. Don't tell him that.
I was gonna say there are worse things in the world. We do have a handful of other prospects to get into, and that's all going to be coming up in just one moment. We are back here at Locked On Canadiens. The show has been flying by because Patrik is a fountain of European prospects knowledge. And Canadiens fans, you are not following him on Twitter. One, you're doing Twitter absolutely incorrectly at Zeb_Habs on Twitter. You don't want to miss out on that. Patrik, we talked a little bit before the show started about some of the other names that are floating around the SHL, and obviously, or not just the SHL, Europe in general here. I don't want to exclude Finland in that, because that would be extremely rude of myself. I guess we'll finish with the last big name playing over in Sweden right now, someone that you followed very closely, Fredrik Disho, playing for Frölunda this past season. What can you say about his season? I know it was a down year in terms of, I don't want to say accolades for the club as a whole, but he seems to have been finding his footing a little bit as a young goaltender in the SHL. Or am I a little off base on that?
I think first and foremost, I need to correct your name again because I've been saying it Disho, so I know you as well, but it's actually pronounced Dikov.
Oh,
and yeah, we can imagine how that will sound in American English. But yeah, that's first and foremost. But otherwise, it's funny because I've joked about it the full season, and I joked about it last season as well. The expectations on Frölunda is obviously huge. They finished 6th in the league. They're going directly into the quarterfinals. They have a chance of an upset. They have a ton of injuries, and we call it a failed season. And they still reach the semifinal of the Champions Hockey League.
How terrible! How absolutely terrible for them.
I'd be like, if my football team did that, I'd be very happy. But yeah, no. We all knew he wasn't going to play as much as last year, where he carried the team in Hockey Allsvenskan. Obviously, he chose Frölunda for a lot of different reasons. Development of goalies has not been Frölunda's strength. So there was this, you wondered. But he's been a fan of Frölunda since he was a kid. So you get it. Obviously, he followed Henrik Lundqvist and those steps. I totally get it. We did expect him to play a little bit more. What Frölunda has done is they took in probably the best goalie in Europe, Lars Johansson from CSKA in Moscow, who didn't want to stay in Moscow or he was in SKA, in St. Petersburg. He didn't want to stay there for, obvious reasons. But he didn't adjust well into the SHL again. And obviously with defenders, former Montreal Canadian Christian Folin, as an example, injured for a couple of weeks or a month. Borgman, another former NHL player and AHL player, also injured for quite some bit. So there's been a rotation on defense, and they let Johansson play himself into shape. I think Disho has been very, very good when he's had the opportunity to play full games with full confidence. And he still has, the weakness he has is rebound control. And that is probably the main thing that he needs to work on. I know they're working on it. Lars Johansson is very impressed with Fredrik. Frölunda's coaches are very impressed with Fredrik. His work ethic. He's learning to become a pro, which was one thing that he pointed out in Kristianstad, where he played last year, that he needed to do. The work ethic, eating right, focusing on game days, etc., etc. I think it's been a valuable year. I wish he would have gotten more games. Yes, it's hard to measure his progress, but I think he's made progress. Physically, it's clear that he's made progress because he's bigger, more confident in that regard. Weakness is still rebound control.
And that's the thing is with player development and then another year of study and analysis, getting older. Those are things that goaltenders take more time. We saw it with, one of the best of all time. Carey Price wasn't a perfect starter at first. I'm not saying that Dieckhoff is going to become Carey Price, but I know people are kind of, quick to go, oh, Jakob Dobisch is playing so well. Different leagues, different stages in development. And I do think it's unwise to give up or to not pay attention to this progress too.
And I expect Canadiens to extend a qualifying offer for Deschamps this year, so to keep his rights and then loan him back into Finland directly, and hopefully he will get a chance to play a bit more. Partly, Johansson's confidence will be better, and they don't need to play him into shape. And second, a more stable defense, and that should work as well.
I think, yeah, and it's like you said, you would know better than I do. It's like I would be shocked if he was not, back in Sweden for another year, which kind of fits their timeline for things right now. They seem to like having Jake Allen and Samuel Montembeault in the NHL, and Caden Primo's right there. And then they still you can always find a free agent goalie in North America. You don't want to rush your development pieces until they're ready.
I think until you move Primo one way or another up or to another team, before that you don't going to bring in Dobisch or Deschamps or Verbetek or any of the others, or the goalie they definitely will pick in this year's draft, because they pick one every year. And
that's the thing is, like, yeah, you only have so much development space for everybody. In a perfect world, is that two goalies, but sooner or later someone's got to take the reins, and if you don't give everyone an opportunity to do so, they're playing like during the lockout or the COVID year where they were trying to play 3 goalies in the AHL, 2 of which were prospects. It becomes difficult. I guess the last 2 names that we really wanted to get into before I let you go here, as we close up on time, Petteri Nurmi and Oliver Kapanen both playing over in Finland. I'm just curious for your thoughts, because you've said in our own Slack chat you think Nurmi might be an AHL bound before anybody else, perhaps a little unexpectedly, if I am not misremembering things here.
I'm not sure about Nurmi's contract. Let's be honest with that. So I want to give that an out.
Yes,
but I think it would be preferable for Nurmi to go to AHL this year or in this fall. He's already out of the playoffs if you can sign him, but I've seen there's a lot of names in the AHL as well for defenders. But bring him over, see what he has. He has had a very prominent positive trajectory over the last couple of seasons in Finland. I would have hoped that HPK would have given him a chance to go to a bigger club and participate in the playoffs. They didn't, so now he's sort of stranded. But yeah, he's smart, again, very smart player, defensive aware with a bit of an offensive upside, not much, but he passes the puck well. He shoots with a intent rather than precision and strength, but he shoots to a little bit like Lindström in a way. Someone can do something with this puck and not just try to shoot a hole through the net. But yeah, I think Nurmi is that way. Kapanen, I just realized, and I think I pointed it out at the time, but during the World Juniors, he signed an extension with Kalpa. And that means that obviously he's in the same agreement as we spoke about Norlinder and Heineman and potentially Engstrom. If they sign him, I don't think they will sign Engstrom. They're happy where he is. Let him grow. Don't rush it. Don't put extra pressure on when he comes to Montreal during development camp. But Kapanen, I would probably want to see him in another role. He is a rookie in Finland because he didn't play 18 games, or he played 18 games only, and 18 games was the cutoff for being a rookie. So therefore, he's second in rookie scoring, even if he played 18 games last year. In the thing is, he's more or less on the same pace as Ilonen was in his second draft plus 2 year, on a better team, on a much better team. I like Kapanen as a hockey player, I think he will have a fantastic hockey career, be it in Europe, in AHL. I think he's a Vedemo player, complete. And I know quite a few professional scouts in Europe thinks the same way. That is not a very bad player.
Not at all. I look at Kapanen too. I keep realizing I think he's older than he is because he's constantly been talked about for the longest time, and he's only 19. I keep thinking he's 21, 22, and it's like, no, he's only 19 years old.
Yeah. Very late. They took. He's in July, right? Birthday.
Yeah, July 29th. So he's a real late 2000.
So like two months later, and he would have been in the same draft as Engstrom, right? So let's be honest about that. He has a lot, but he's kind of smallish. Does he project as a center or does he project as a winger? That's the first question you have to ask. The second is there enough offensive upside, or will he become, that shutdown player that you toss in? We saw it in the World Juniors. He didn't light the Finnish team on fire or the opponent's team on fire either, but he played very, very smart. You put him out there on the PK, you put him out there on the power play. I don't see the power play strength, I'll be honest with that, but he is there. He often scores in batches. I always think the ketchup effect has gone into a spin. Like you have that ketchup bottle and you squeeze, and nothing happens, and then suddenly everything on one go. And I just sort of expect him to continue to but it comes out in batches. He has a lot of growing to do. You got another 2 years to let him do that in Europe and bring him over a little bit like Vedemo, who stayed 4 years in Europe without anyone asking for him to start playing in the AHL. Same with Artur Lekkonen, that went straight into the NHL as well. Didn't have to play a game in the AHL. And God, yeah, watching him on the wrong side of the Bell Center sent shivers down my spine. But yeah, I'm super happy Lekkonen got that cup, and we got a first round pick and for him as well. So
yeah.
Fair play. And I've followed Lekkonen for so long, so I'm super happy and excited for his career choice. But I don't see Kapanen in getting that offensive upside that Lekkonen had. And numbers are okay. It sounds impressive for rookie scoring. It's good in the regard that, he's getting better and he's getting more chances. I just don't want expectations to be too high on him, because there's a point. It's not his fault. It's coaching. It's development. It's where his strengths and weaknesses are. And his weakness is, unfortunately for me right now, even if he's second in goalie scoring, but the other guy is about 2 years younger, is that, he is in the offensive zone. And it's been that since I saw him first live in the Four Nations tournament in November a year and a half ago. He squeezed his stick a little bit too hard. He wants to do too much. And maybe, if he gets the break and things starts to happen, he could get there. But I don't expect it.
And that's the thing, is the good thing is that the Canadiens have so many opportunities. I'm going to have Patrik back on next week. We're going to actually be talking draft prospects in that. Axel Sand and Pelika, some other players.
But, we need to finish with some good stuff. And I think, if you have the opportunity to watch Engström play against arguably one of the top two teams in Sweden this year in the quarterfinals, because this is going to be a really good evaluation on where he is in his first draft year, or draft plus 1 year.
And the best part is that if you aren't able to watch the game live, you can follow Patrik on Twitter at Zeb_Habs. That is ZEB_Habs on Twitter. Of course, he also has his articles at Habs Eyes on the Prize. He has the Dispatch podcast, correct? With Habs Eyes on the Prize that he does with Anton Rasegard. You don't want to miss out on that. If you're not following Patrik as a Canadiens fan, or even a fan of European prospects in general, there's no one better to be following on there. Patrik, thank you so much for making time to come on and talk Habs prospects with me. And I can't wait for you to come back next week when we talk all about the draft and everything else. Well, in that case then, I am gonna sign.
I thought you signed off.
No, I got to do my sign off now. You can obviously follow us at LO_Canadians on Twitter, Locked On Canadians, wherever you find your podcast, or on YouTube. You can follow myself at Scott Matla on Twitter. Folks, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you next time.